What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 6 of Real Spill, where the truth wins. It's your boy, Scott Proctor, joined by my guy, as always, Ellis L. Williams, who covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. Before we go any further, go smack that like button, subscribe to BVM Sports. You can catch me and L talking Panthers and NFL every Friday morning. But L, my man, let's hop right into it, right, my man, with bump and run. We got a special one today. We're not talking about last week's matchups. We're talking about Tuesday's trade deadline. What caught our eye? L, I'll toss it up to you first, man. What was your favorite deal? Something that caught your eye? Who improved the most to you on Tuesday's trade deadline?
Yeah, first, I think the Bradley Chubb one is one we got to discuss. Whenever a first round pick is involved and edge rusher going to a contender, that's big. But I think the deal that is flying a little bit under the radar is Nyheim Hines to the Buffalo Bills. This Buffalo team is in an arms race clearly with the Kansas City Chiefs. You saw Kansas City acquire Kadarius Toney for just a third round pick from the New York Giants. Can't wait to see what that's going to look like Sunday night. And then people forget that the Buffalo Bills not only circled the wagon on Christian McCaffrey this past draft, but J.D. McKissick of the Washington Commanders.
He was almost basically a Buffalo Bill, right? And then he ended up going back to Washington last minute. You're right. I almost forgot about that.
Exactly, Scotty Van. So that's what I'm trying to say is that this type of running back, this type of weapon, this type of playmaker has been in the Buffalo Bills' eye for a while. Definitely. And I think they finally found him in Nyheim Hines. I think that role is going to be expansive. I like Devin Singletary, throw up the X at running back there, but clearly there's something in that Devin Singletary can't do that they think clearly Christian McCaffrey, J.D. McKissick, and now Nyheim Hines can accomplish. I can't wait to see what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And that's why they drafted James Cook, right, out of Georgia to kind of fill that role. He hasn't, been able to step into that, so far as a rookie. I believe he fumbled his very first carry this season, which isn't a great start. But, obviously, Hines is going to fill it. He's going to get some tick. Obviously, he showed a lot in Indianapolis, playing behind Jonathan Taylor and whatnot. So that's going to be interesting. We know the Buffalo Bills, if it was up to them, they would just sit back and let Josh Allen drop back every single down. Nyheim Hines is obviously going to help in that regard. You mentioned Bradley Chubb, man. That's what I would want to talk about because that's huge. This Dolphins team is a Super Bowl caliber team now at this point. Obviously, we know what they are offensively with Tua, Cheetah, and Waddle. The defense has been a bit underwhelming this season, but in years past, that's been the strong point. I think adding Bradley Chubb is massive. The Dolphins only have 15 sacks through 8 games. Jalen Phillips leads them with 3, and I think that's going to form a nasty 1-2 punch. I was high on Jalen Phillips last year coming out of Miami. Coming out of Miami, going right back to, Miami with the Dolphins. He's looking like a really good young player. Obviously, having Bradley Chubb on the other side is going to open up things even more for him. So, again, I like this as a Super Bowl caliber team. You got to be able to chase around Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson in the AFC. You got to be able to try to get home with just rushing 4 guys. Bradley Chubb is going to help in that regard. So this is huge for the Dolphins. I want to talk about one more, too, before we move on. A little selfishly, Chase Claypool to the Bears.
I was waiting for that. Come on,
Chase Claypool to the Bears. We can talk about the compensation. This year's second-round pick, the Bears' second-round pick, maybe being a little bit too much. But, again, this is somebody in Chase Claypool who I loved as a rookie coming out of Notre Dame. What you want in a receiver, somebody you can throw out there 6'4", 240, a jump ball demon, can, run your jet sweeps, can block in the run game. This is exactly what Justin Fields and this offense needs at this point. And, I'll go a little bit further. Josh Allen was a bit pedestrian until he got Stephon Diggs. Tua was a bit pedestrian until he got the Cheetah. And I'm not calling Chase Claypool as the same, level as Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill, obviously, but he's damn good. Chase Claypool is damn good. He's damn explosive. He's still young as hell. I think this is going to help unlock Justin Fields, and it's also going to help unlock Darnell Mooney a little bit, who showed real flashes last season, but, it's been a little underwhelming this season, trying to adjust and to beat that number 1 guy offensively at the receiver position. So I think Chase Claypool, I think this is a huge deal for the Bears, man. I love that, honestly. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the Ringer always talks about league pass teams when they talk about the NBA, like teams that aren't going to be competing for the playoffs, but if you had league pass, you'd want to watch them.
Yeah.
Just that Monday night game against the Patriots, the Bears were on that list. They're finally running Justin Fields, and now you add Chase Claypool.
Yep.
They've got some stuff brewing and cooking there. The NFC North in general, the Vikings adding TJ Hawkinson, the Packers doing nothing. The Lions are a darling of Hard Knocks. It's a fascinating division, man. We really could keep going on if we had the time.
No doubt about it, man. We'll move on, though. We'll move on to today's big spill where we're talking to Johnny Venerable, who covers the Arizona Cardinals for PHNX Cardinals. Welcome into the big spill. We're joined by a special guest today, Johnny Venerable, who covers the Arizona Cardinals for PHNX Cardinals. Johnny, so the Vikings obviously beat Ellis's hometown, Minnesota Vikings, beat the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday for their 5th straight win. And Patrick Peterson got some payback against his former team, then had some stuff to say after the game. We'll play that video here for our audience's viewing pleasure.
And I've been told a lot of things about me with the other organization. Get fan mails from the owner saying that I can't tackle, I'm old, I lost it. So I wanted to show him that. And I'm still waiting on Steve Kahn to call me. Still haven't talked to him yet.
Really?
No.
But he sent you emails? Was that him that was sending you emails? Who was doing that?
I don't know. Someone was sending emails to the, to the owners, and I get them on my chair, just things like that.
You talking about this week?
No, when I was there.
When you were there.
Yeah.
Somebody was leaving emails about you couldn't tackle on your chair in the locker room.
And they said they went to the fact to say as long as I was on the team, they wasn't going to be a season ticket holder anymore. I think his name was John H. Berry, if I'm not mistaken.
Any message for John H. Berry today?
You see me. You see me.
But also, why would they print it out and leave it on your chair too, right?
That was the mind-boggling thing to me. I'm like, what? What did I do to deserve this from a fan?
Johnny, what did you make of that, man? What did you make of P2's comments? And obviously, him harboring obviously some still ill will about his former squad.
I mean, it's par for the course with Patrick Peterson since he's left Arizona. And even before, he asked for a trade. He got dinged for PEDs. And he's intent on burning like all bridges with this fan base, which is the most unfortunate part. He has issues with the GM, Steve Keim. He thought he should have been paid, extended, whatever. But I don't know if you're Patrick. I mean, you hit free agency. You've gotten 2 one-year deals with Minnesota, and you're playing good football now, but it's not like other teams were lining up to pay you. So even if you've got ill will clearly toward the GM of the Cardinals, like you've kind of disassociated yourself with this fan base now. They have a common enemy in Patrick Peterson, which is unfortunate. I love P2. Love what he brought to the city, the time that he spent here. He's on a lot of good teams, the Bruce Arians area, went to the playoffs a couple times. He deserves absolutely to be in the Ring of Honor one day. I think he's going to get Hall of Fame votes, rightfully so. It's just unfortunate that he leaves the Cardinal franchise and chooses to kind of behave this way, act this way. I mean, it's okay to hold ill will and you want to take it out on your former team. Players do that, weekly in this league. But, I mean, to be so public with it, it almost feels like an attack on the fan base and the gloating and the arrogance. It's just like, hey, Patrick, you're on a good team. You're playing really good football for the first time in a couple of years. Just savor that, enjoy that, instead of going after the former club that, let's face it, made him the highest paid cornerback in the NFL, paid him a premium, and put him in positions to succeed from day one. So it's just ugly when a player like that leaves the organization, a la like an Anquan Bolden, although it wasn't this animated. And, the fan base, he's beloved, and yet now it takes an ugly turn.
Yeah, I just found it interesting. Obviously, his comments, whether you believe them, I don't think he has a reason to lie. Just about the brass, leaving hate fan mail on his locker room and whatnot, and that just makes me think of Kyler Murray and his contract situation this offseason when obviously the inclusion of the film study part that obviously went viral. They had to backtrack that. That kind of just makes me think that this brass just among its many issues almost has a problem with letting its players get embarrassed in the media. One, obviously, P2 is an example based on what he said, and Kyler as well. I think there's some intertwining there between those two situations.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you're not wrong. And I mean, the Cardinals are not the model franchise. Anybody knows that, but they do think they're buttoned up. And Michael Bidwell, here's what I will say, is very pro player, much more than his late father, Bill Bidwell. He wants to pay stars. He wants to keep his stars happy. That's why this whole Kyler Murray saga in the offseason, they were not prepared for the contract demands to become that public. Clearly, the number continued to rise. They thought they were hedging their bet with that addendum. It was an egregious decision. It got leaked out. and you embarrass yourself as a franchise, but you undermine your quarterback in the process to the point where, like, this Call of Duty joke that has, in my opinion, run its course will not go away until Kyler Murray either parts with the organization and stops playing football entirely, or he wins a bunch of games and has success in the postseason. That will be the only way. And if you're Michael Bidwell, like, you have no one to blame but yourself. And I think Michael Bidwell has done a number of really good things for this franchise. You put them in a position to get a new stadium. They've been to the playoffs. They've been much more relevant in my lifetime than the prior decades combined. But it just shows you that they still have a ways to go to be considered, obviously, a top-tier franchise in the same realm as, like, historically a Pittsburgh, a New England, a Green Bay. They're taking baby steps, and I think they've taken a couple steps backwards this year.
Yeah, and real quick, building off that, just from the outside looking in on the Arizona Cardinals, it seems like a Jekyll and Hyde organization. Like, you get the AJ Greens and the JJ Watts and the DeAndre Hopkins of the world to come there, yeah. But then you have spats internally with some of your core guys. It's really tough to get a read on. It sounds like you've been dealing with the same stuff.
Yeah, and they brought in those guys in 2021 to help with the leadership void that they felt like Kyler wasn't providing. And so they went out and they brought in James Conner and AJ Green and JJ Watt, and it worked last year. Right. But then they kind of doubled down on older players this year while giving Kyler Murray $45 million. It's like, no. Like, Kyler's in charge now. And I've seen leadership growth from Kyler. I think Kyler is the best homegrown franchise quarterback by far this team has ever had. But that doesn't mean he's perfect. But at the same time, you look at a lot of the older players they've invested in. Rodney Hudson, not good. Justin Pugh, injured. AJ Green looks like he's done. James Conner is injured. I mean, really, it's the youth of this team that's keeping them at least hovering around 500, just slightly below, whereas the older players that they're paying a premium aren't getting it done. So I think most Cardinal fans right now, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern after last year's 10-2 start, which very much feels like a mirage. It's like, how do we get to the next stage of Cardinal football? And does that include Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim?
No doubt about it. So the Cardinals obviously, stood pat, no pun intended, at Tuesday's NFL trade deadline. Was that the expectation heading into it to you, do you think? And what message do you think that kind of sends to those, kind of in and around that building?
Yeah, it was expected. They made 3 trades really since the start of training camp, a couple rotational depth pieces, Trayvon Mullen, Cody Ford, obviously Robbie Anderson was done out of necessity when Hollywood Brown went down. He's going to be out until early December. To me, if the Cardinals were like they were last year, if they were above 500, the Bradley Chubb trade, for instance, that's a move that screams Steve Keim, giving up a first-round pick to get a pass rusher in his prime. Steve Keim went to NC State, as did assistant GM Adrian Wilson. So they think highly of Bradley Chubb. But how do you justify it at 3-5? You're on the outside looking in, probably not going to make the playoffs. I mean, we're hopeful, but we just have to be realistic. If they were 5-3, for instance, it's a move I think definitely would have had their fingerprints all over. They have not gotten a lot of pass rush help, especially on the edge. They have not replaced Chandler Jones. So it's going to be a position where that first round pick is, if you're Michael Bidwell, that's valuable. It's valuable in the spring, obviously. It's valuable maybe for the next regime. Could it be valuable to lure Sean Payton to Arizona from New Orleans? You'd have to flip a pick if the Saints are willing to deal him away. So there are a bunch of different factors, and you really can't hamstrung yourself in selling off premium picks right now when there's so much uncertainty. Plus, guys, this team is underachieved. They are more talented than they've perceived, even without a consistent pass rush. How many resources are you going to give this coaching staff until you just say, you got to win with what you have?
No doubt about it. One guy that you mentioned, obviously, Robbie Anderson. Ellis spent some time obviously covering him with the Carolina Panthers. He was obviously brought in to hopefully fill a void that Marquise Hollywood Brown left behind, and obviously Nuke Hopkins is back in the lineup. But do you envision Robbie Anderson carving out a role in this offense? He's obviously played 2 games, just 4 targets to those 2 games, no catches. What do you envision for his future in Arizona if there is one?
Yeah, I did when they made the move. I thought that they would begin to implement him immediately. They'd love to use him vertically. The pass protection has not been good since they've had a bunch of injuries up front. I think that has hampered their ability to stretch the field with Robbie. I know Kyler forced a couple balls his way, kind of out of necessity against the Vikings. I want to believe they're going to utilize him because I think he is a very complimentary number 2 to DeAndre Hopkins. Then you mix in Rondale Moore, and then goodness, when you get Hollywood back in December, should be one of the better receiving cores in football. But I say all that to kind of preface it by, Cliff Kingsbury, the creativity has not been there this year. The play calling has been at times horrendous. His scripted plays, 12 to 15 play drives to begin every game have been the worst in football. And I say that because the Cardinals are the only team in the NFL that have not scored a first touchdown in the first quarter. They haven't scored a touchdown period to begin the season this year. So they're always playing from behind. I think in a perfect world, you get him some targets and some catches, get his confidence up this weekend against the susceptible Seahawks secondary. And listen, he's under contract next year. And they gave up a couple picks, down the line, and he's got a bunch of dead money if you were to cut him. So I also think that this is probably next year kind of hedging their bet, but they've got a lot of money tied up in receiver. DeAndre Hopkins, rightfully so, is going to make $30 million next year. Hollywood Brown's going to have an extension come due soon. Rondale Moore makes decent money as a second-round pick. So they've paid a lot for receivers, and it's time we get the production.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see if Robbie Anderson can develop a role off script in that Cardinals offense. He hasn't really been asked to do that, especially in his time in Carolina, not having a quarterback who could create outside the pocket, obviously like Kyler Murray can. Or is Robbie Anderson just destined to be a one side of the field, deep post, take the safety out of the picture, and the Cardinals keep carving up underneath with Rondale Moore?
Yeah, and again, I don't want to harp on Cliff too much, but
feel free.
He's in a position right now where the optics are not great. He's getting in shouting matches with his franchise quarterback, and then he's supposed to be the offensive guru, and people are talking about giving up play calling. It was just like, what would you say you do here, Cliff, if you're not scheming up points every week? It just looks so difficult. So I am not surprised that Robbie has had a tough time acclimating, because everybody else outside of DeAndre Hopkins, who can walk on a football field and catch 10 passes for 120 yards, has struggled this year. And that includes Kyler Murray. This is the fourth year for this regime. It should not be this difficult.
It shouldn't. Probably last question we got for you, Johnny, before we let you get up out of here. You mentioned the Cardinals matchup on Sunday against the NFC West leading Seattle Seahawks. How big of a game is that for, Cliff, Kyler, and the crew? And what do you envision? How do you envision that one playing out?
Yeah, it feels like every other week we're talking about a must-win for Cliff Kingsbury. This is it. You can't be swept by the rebuilding Seahawks. I don't care how good of a story they are. And Pete Carroll's got them playing with their hair on fire. Kudos to them. I've always thought Pete's a Hall of Fame head coach. But you fall to 3-6, your season is essentially over. You get swept. You start 0-3 in the division. They've already lost to the Rams. They have to play the Rams again and the Niners twice. It becomes not when will he get fired, not if he gets fired, but when he gets fired, in my opinion, because you're going to lose part of the locker room if you get swept by a rebuilding Seattle team. I told you guys off air, we played a game on our show, like rank the 10 best players in this game. Most of them are Cardinals. You've got the $45 million quarterback. You're at home, right? You've got DeAndre Hopkins now, which you didn't have 2 weeks ago in Seattle when you suffered that loss. You need to win this game. It's got to be balls to the wall, pulling out all the stops, onside kicks, fake punts. You cannot let your fans go home thinking this team is done. We can't support Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim for the rest of the year. You can't let Kenneth Walker run all over you again. Whether it's by 3 or by 30, you have to win this game. I don't know if they can. They're a slight home favorite, but I've watched this team struggle since about mid-December last year. There's not a lot of confidence right now, but winning cures everything. And as long as they have Kyler Murray under center, they're always going to be competitive. But can Cliff Kingsbury get him to that next level? That remains to be seen.
And unfortunately for Cliff, the Carolina Panthers are not on the Cardinals schedule again this season.
No, we would love to play the Panthers and the Saints every other week, but that is not. It's not how things roll. But I mean, you guys mentioned it. The NFC is so down this year.
Right.
The Cardinals hedged their bet in the offseason. We're going to run it back, right? We're going to re-sign some of our own guys. We're not going to be active in free agency. We feel like even 80% of last year, we'll get to 10 wins. We can make the playoffs. And they were right to think that the NFC was going to take a step back. They were wrong to think that they did not need to improve their pass rush, right? Maybe get Cliff Kingsbury, a senior offensive advisor like a Jim Caldwell, to help him manage games. Yeah. They didn't do enough. They just ran it back, and now you're seeing the results. It's an under 500 team.
For sure. And now we got a week 9 must-win game. We love to see it. But this has been awesome, Johnny. Thanks so much for joining us, my man. Go follow Johnny and his great work on Twitter and whatnot at PHNX Cardinals. But for Johnny, L, and Scott here, we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, guys.
We'll move on here to our on the PROWL section, man. We'll talk about these Carolina Panthers as we do every week, man. It's a crazy week to talk about them, man. I mean, you were at a hell of a game on Sunday, my guy. I'm a bit jealous you were able to take that all in person. Let's talk about it, though. Obviously, the Falcons beat the Panthers in one of the craziest games, one of the craziest finishes in recent history that I can remember to take sole possession in the first place. What was your biggest takeaway from that crazy game, and what'd you make of that final sequence in particular? Obviously, with DJ Moore, the crazy touchdown leading into overtime and whatnot.
Where should we begin? Let's start with me selfishly. I learned how to write a game story in 6 different ways all over the course of like 3 minutes, man. I've tweeted something about Control-Alt-Delete, and the original Control-Alt-Delete game is the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama.
With the kick six?
Yeah, when they returned the field goal and just the Control-Alt-Delete. As a writer, you got something and you just got to delete everything and start over. That DJ Moore play, I've never seen a football fly as far as it did when PJ Walker hucked.
I mean, dude, Patrick Mahomes tweeted it after too. That's the throw of the year, hands down. I mean, I really don't think people understand how difficult that is. What he did. Kind of rolling to his left, exactly. Kind of rolling to his left a little bit, not able to fully step into it, but you couldn't tell the way that thing traveled. 64 yards in the air, catching DJ Moore in stride on the money in the end zone with the game on. I mean, that's just top tier stuff. And you've been calling it. You've been talking about PJ Walker been balling. That quote you said that he said, a while back just stuck with me. Well, what was it that,
he goes, I know I can make every throw, but not every throw has to be made. That's what I learned.
Just right there.
Hey, man. And look, PJ Walker just 2 weeks ago didn't have a completion travel past the line of scrimmage against the Los Angeles Rams and was laughed through Twitter throughout the week. And now he has not only the throw of the year, but the longest traveling football since Next Gen Stats started tracking air yards in 2016. I mean, to go back to what this game means, though, because we could keep unpacking that play. I mean, Brian Burns said it, called it a dot. He said, usually you see a Hail Mary go up for a jump ball. That he hit DJ Moore in stride.
That didn't look like a Hail Mary. Like, even
exactly.
Crazy.
It was a called play.
Yeah.
What I learned from that game, though, is really what we all thought going into it. Like, the NFC South is wide open. And nobody should count the Panthers out. Nobody should count the Saints out at this point. Everyone thinks that Tom Brady's going to eventually figure this out. That's no guarantee. And the Atlanta Falcons are in first place. It's a division that might take 6 wins at this point. I mean, because you can't watch that game and be like, oh, Atlanta, that's a division winner.
You're right.
You're right. And mind you, before they kicked the game-winning kick, Marcus Mariota had a 30-yard scramble to set that play up.
I think that was the biggest play of the game, aside from the Moore touchdown, obviously. Mariota, that scramble to set up the game-winning field goal. But go ahead.
Exactly. And Brian Burns, if you watch that playback, had Marcus Mariota wrapped up in the backfield on a third. It was a 3rd and 3 play. The loss would have turned it to like 4th and 9 or 10. Atlanta punts to Carolina with 3 minutes to go. Who knows what happens? No doubt. This division is completely up in the air, which is why I was not surprised when Brian Burns was not traded at the deadline on Tuesday. This team is riding a real fine line of trying to maximize what it can do right now because of the situation while building for an unknown future. And Brian Burns is just too important of a pillar for that.
No doubt about it. Obviously, let's continue to talk about the offense just a little bit more. 55 combined points for the Panthers over the last 2 weeks for this offense that was averaging about 17, I believe, for the first 6 weeks. What do you think is the biggest reason for that? Is it PJ? Is it this offensive line that's quietly playing some good football? Is it the play calling, or a combination of all those things?
Yeah, I think let's start with the offensive line. They've been good all year.
Yeah,
they have developed both a sound pocket for PJ to feel comfortable in, but also the running game is how this team sets the tone. Deontay Foreman, not only 3 touchdowns last week, but back-to-back 118-yard rushing performance.
Balling.
Exactly. This team knows what it can do up front. And then PJ Walker's just making the 4 or 5 throws a game that you need a quarterback to make in order for your team to believe in itself. This Panthers team is scoring because of PJ Walker throws that would initially resulted in field goals for the team. They're now converting touchdowns. PJ Walker has this team just believing in itself, and he's making throws that you go, oh, no. Yes. Okay. And when you got a quarterback who trusts himself like that behind an offensive line and playmakers like DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall finally starting to show something, I think this offense is going to keep gaining momentum.
No doubt about it. You mentioned Terrace Marshall there at the end. I think he's due for a big second half of the season. I've been waiting on him. He's obviously a talented dude. I think he just needs the opportunities. I think that'll come. And, yeah, this NFC South race is going to be fascinating. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So we'll strap in for sure. And we'll move on here, too, to probably my favorite segment, Nickel and Dime, man. Talk about, who was at 10 last week and who wasn't even worth a damn. Nick, I'll let you start. Tell me about your dime from week 8L.
Look, it has to go to Christian McCaffrey, now of the San Francisco 49ers. Not only can he run for a touchdown, not only can he catch a pass or catch a touchdown, he can also throw for a touchdown.
The hat trick.
The hat trick, dog. And if you check out first of all, his throwing touchdown was a nice little dime. I mean, that's a 30.
It might have been the best throw of that game. Quite honestly, if we're keeping it 100.
Right, with Jimmy Garoppolo on the same team.
Yeah, right.
And then the receiving touchdown. I mean, he just is such a acrobatically, situationally aware pass catcher. That's why you trade for Christian McCaffrey. It's not to give him 20 carries. He's a really good running back.
Right.
But it's all of the mismatches he's going to create in the passing game. Just watch the 49ers run checkdowns and options and dish offs and allowing Chris McCaffrey to be the number 3 read in a play. Mm-hmm. So when you got everything covered, you got Kittle covered intermediate, you got Ayuk covered deep, and now Jimmy Garoppolo goes to his 3rd read, which is Christian McCaffrey, and a defense thinks they have everything figured up, and he takes a 1-yard pass for 9, 12, 15 yards. This is going to be a blast to watch. Christian McCaffrey, dime, and you can probably pencil it in for the rest of our show this year, right?
Absolutely, because he's my dime this week as well. I mean, obviously, you mentioned it. The hat trick is crazy, and this is the thing, too. I think the Niners, I talked about the Dolphins being a Super Bowl contender in the AFC. I'm expecting the 49ers to be in the Super Bowl, to be the Super Bowl representative out of the NFC. I mean, just having Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, Juszczyk, who's arguably the best fullback in the game, Trent Williams, who's arguably the best left tackle in the game, plus Christian McCaffrey on the field at one time with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, dial things up. That's just entirely too much for any defense, and the Niners defense in itself is arguably a top 5 unit in the league. So I think this Christian McCaffrey trade put the Niners over the top. I expect them to play in the Super Bowl as long as Jimmy G can, can just keep things afloat. But we'll move on to our nickel, man, and I gotta.
Who you got?
I gotta be objective, right? I gotta keep it. I gotta keep it a being, right? And so I gotta give a nickel to my boy Zach Wilson, man. We've had small conversations about him on this show over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we know I'm that's my guy. I'm a defender, but I can't defend Sunday's performance. 3 interceptions, none of them being respectable interceptions, all of them being egregious in force. Obviously, Bill Belichick is going to do that to you sometimes, but that's just unacceptable. And you would think Dan Orlovsky came out and told him point blank, you need to grow up. And, I mean, I see the same things. He's looked too much like the rookie year Zach Wilson after a decent start to the season. And now with Breece Hall out of the lineup, they're going to be depending more and more on Zach Wilson. And, he can't have games like he had on Sunday. He did throw for 350 and 2 tugs, so it wasn't all bad. But, again, the 3 interceptions is unacceptable, especially in a divisional game. You just can't do that. So, Zach Wilson, hopefully this is my last time giving him a nickel, but he gets it this week.
Yeah, and he's my nickel too, and we agreed on both these guys because of just their polar opposite performances. But I'm glad you mentioned the 350 and couple of scores, because I actually watched every Zach Wilson throw. Shout out to somebody on YouTube who just made a compilation where I could just watch all of them very quickly. Look, he's got a lot of things you like, and I know you know this.
Yeah,
it just was one of my first deep dives into him, and there's a lot of throws you like.
Absolutely.
It's the carelessness with the football that you just can't explain. Those are like college throws where you're already up big or something. I don't understand it. You got people's jobs on the line every time you flip that football. And then secondly, there's some times where he's in the pocket and he gets off platform and he tries to throw just a check down and there's nothing to it. So like he needs to work on his base and throwing fundamentally and keeping his feet. I understand off platform he's really talented, but there's just too much inconsistency. And that's what this whole 2021 class of quarterbacks looks like right now, just to be clear.
No doubt about it. Yeah, he's not alone, but obviously there's still time. And we got to give these young quarterbacks time. Again, we mentioned it. We've seen Josh Allen struggle his first couple years in the league.
Right.
Hopefully hopefully Zach Wilson going a similar trajectory. But we'll close out here, man, with our 2-minute offense. Take a look ahead at this weekend's matchups. Let's start here, man. Seahawks and Cards. We're talking Cardinals with Johnny earlier. Who do you like in this matchup in Arizona?
I mean, how can you not be falling in love with this Seahawks offense? I mean, I retweeted DK Metcalf's fake fade. He ran
cold, bro.
Hilarious.
That was cold.
Man, they're just having fun with it at this point. Like, so just give me the Seahawks. We talked earlier about the mess that is the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. I've been riding that mess all year. No one in Arizona deserves to win this football game.
You're right, man. You're right, man. But I'm going to go with the Cards anyway. I'm buying into the must-win thing. I still believe in Kyler Murray. I think Nuke has another huge game, and I think this franchise, you know, a lot of older guys on the roster, I think they understand the importance of this game. I think they end up getting the split with the Seahawks. So give me the Cards on Sunday. Let's go Rams at Bucks. Two older quarterbacks, two of the most disappointing teams in the NFC and the NFL. This one's in Tampa. Who do you like, Rams or Bucks on Sunday?
Yeah, and talk about a must-win for both. You know, disappointing for the Rams to come off a bye week and lose the way they did the 49ers. The Bucks have showed nothing inspiring, but give me the Bucks. You know, I think Tom Brady's got to figure this out eventually, and the Rams are going to be on the outside looking in, I think.
No doubt about it. We agree here. Give me the Bucks as well. I think they're coming off, a bit of a mini bye with obviously playing, last Thursday against the Ravens. So I think eventually the Bucks got to get this together. I expect the Bucks to, turn their season around more than the Rams at least. So I like the Bucks and Brady on Sunday. Last one here, Monday Night Football, Ravens at Saints in New Orleans. Who you like in that one?
I can't figure this Saints team out. They have an offensive explosion, then their defense doesn't work out, then their defense holds them, and their offense is throwing pick sixes. So give me the Ravens, man. Give me the Ravens. You know what you're getting in Lamar Jackson. I know they're going to be without Rashad Bateman, but this NFC South, I'm just going to stay away from picking them to win any game.
I'm going to go with the Saints, actually, man. I think that win actually last week over the Raiders, although the Raiders haven't been much of anything to talk about this season, I think that might have been a win that gets them going in the right direction. Alvin Kamara is coming back to speed, looking like his old self. Andy Dalton is quietly, been kind of putting up points and looking kind of decent, something that I envision happen. So I'm going to take the home team. Give me the Saints on Monday Night Football, man. But that's going to do it for us for episode 6 of Real Spill. Thanks again so much for joining us. Go hit that like button. Go hit that subscribe button to hear me and Elle talking Panthers and NFL every week. But for Scott Proctor and Ellis L. Williams, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our other videos and don't forget to smack that subscribe button down below while you're at it. Also, for more great and original content, head right over to bvmsports.com.